Now, I'd like to welcome you to Managing Your VISTA project. This webinar is the first step in training for AmeriCorps VISTA supervisors. In the next week or two, you'll be attending an in-person supervisor orientation training that will focus on your role in guiding and managing your VISTA members. Today's session focuses on your responsibilities in managing the VISTA grant and the overall project. As I mentioned, my name is Andy King. I'm a training specialist with AmeriCorps VISTA, and I work in the DC office, the VISTA headquarters office. With me today are Kat Kane from the Alaska State Office and Andy Clark from Education Northwest. And Andy will be assisting us with technology and helping out during the Q&A. And Kat is going to be our main presenter for the day. But before I turn things over to Kat, I want to review, first of all, what we are going to be covering in this session. It's meant to focus on the key pieces that will give you, as a supervisor, the information that you need to ensure the success of your VISTA project and your VISTA members. In this session, we will cover the VISTA project in the context of the National Service Network so you can see how things fit in. We'll review how you can communicate with your state office through both formal and informal methods. We'll talk about project responsibilities and your role in managing the VISTA project. We'll also let you know about opportunities for you to support your VISTA member. And then you'll learn a little bit more about what's going to happen during your supervisor orientation. So this is part of a broader training program that I want to let you know about. So this webinar today is sort of a first opportunity for you to get a grounding in your roles and responsibilities as a VISTA supervisor, as well as the support that's available to you. Next, you'll attend a 3-day supervisor orientation. We have one next week in Atlanta, and then one 2 weeks after that in Los Angeles. We'll also give you additional opportunities for support and training through the VISTA campus. So we'll be talking a little bit about that today. You'll learn a lot more about it while you're in the face-to-face training. And you'll hear as well about webinars that we offer for supervisors on an ongoing basis and other opportunities for you to share ideas and to get input for your VISTA project. So let's take a look at the big picture. And I want to just provide you a little bit of the landscape so you'll have a sense of what VISTA is and where it fits in to the landscape of national service. There is a federal government agency where I work called the Corporation for National and Community Service. The name doesn't sound very much like a government agency, but in fact we are. And we are the agency that is responsible for national service programming and for measuring and leading community volunteering in the United States. There are 3 major programs offered by the Corporation for National and Community Service. On the left, you'll see the logo for Senior Corps. And Senior Corps is a program that, as you might guess, engages older adults in service projects with a whole range of types of service and different issues that are being addressed. On the right in the center there, you'll see the Social Innovation Fund. This is a grant-making fund that provides monies to help support promising ideas and take them to scale. It's done through a 2-level matching program. So for every federal dollar that goes out in a major grant to a large national nonprofit, that organization will match dollar for dollar. And then they'll in turn make smaller grants to community level organizations. And those community level groups also have a matching requirement. So every federal dollar turns into $4 by the time it reaches the community. And then smack in the center is AmeriCorps. And you'll see the logo with the large A in the middle. And there are 3 programs within AmeriCorps that you may already be familiar with. On the left is AmeriCorps NCCC, that's the National Civilian Community Corps. This is a residential program for young adults ages 18 to 22. They live together in dorm-like settings and they work together in small teams. And they're doing very hands-on, physical, direct service type projects. So a lot of times they're involved in school refurbishments. Sometimes it's disaster-related work. There's also environmental aspects, trail building and wetland restoration, those kinds of things. There is a segment of NCCC that's called FEMA Corps, and we have partnered with the Federal Emergency Management Agency to develop a corps of trained young adults who are ready to respond to disaster and also to work year-round in communities to help them prepare. Next is AmeriCorps State and National Grants. And these are the AmeriCorps programs that you might also be familiar with. They're providing direct service. So their members sign up to serve a certain number of hours, and they're involved in everything from arts programming to tutoring, mentoring, food bank, community revitalization. But they're working directly with those who are receiving the services. And then in the lower right is AmeriCorps VISTA, which is distinct from the other 2 branches of AmeriCorps. First, in its focus exclusively on anti-poverty efforts. Secondly, it's distinct in that the types of activities that VISTA members do are focused on capacity building. So rather than a VISTA member tutoring children or adults in the community, they're setting up a tutoring program and they're training other volunteers to do the tutoring, and they're raising funds to support the tutoring program. So you can see how VISTA is distinct. All right, so that's just a quick look at those other programs. We want you to be aware of them so that if you hear of these other types of national service programs, you'll know how they're related. Next, I want to spend just a little time talking about our state offices. So the Corporation for National and Community Service, we have our headquarters office in DC where I'm located, but then we have 47 state offices around the country that are our local presence and who manage the programming in those respective states. So the staff members at our state offices help to develop, manage, and monitor the VISTA projects within their state. And in some cases, they will manage a large multi-state project that will have sites in other parts of the country as well. But we have to, assign them somewhere so that they get managed. So it's possible that the state office managing your project or the grant that supports your project may not be the state where you're actually located. Our state office staff are there to support you in supervising your VISTAs, and they can help when emergencies might rise. If one of your members has a death in the family and needs to travel on short notice, there's support from the VISTA program, and that is accessible through your state office. Likewise, if there are challenging supervision situations, maybe a VISTA is not performing according to expectation, that's the type of issue that you can take to your state office, and they'll be able to provide you with support and guidance and walk you through the process. The state office is also responsible for connecting you to resources that are going to help meet your needs and ensure the success of your VISTA project. Further support that's available from your state office includes technical assistance in the form of a conference call, a webinar, or maybe even a face-to-face meeting, depending on where you're located, on things like e-grants, recruitment, training your VISTA members, the CNCS performance measures, or any other types of things that come up regarding your project plan. If maybe the initial plan that you've set out doesn't seem to be working, they can sit down with you and help you figure out adjustments that might make it more successful. The state office is also responsible for monitoring your project in what we call compliance monitoring. So that takes the form of a visit, typically, to make sure that the project is being managed the way it's supposed to be. And then again, they're there to support you in supervising your VISTA members. And I'll mention that in addition to all of the work that state offices do in support of VISTA programs, they also, at the same time, are supporting the senior corps projects that are located in their state as well. So you might feel like you're their only client, but in fact, they've got a whole portfolio of state senior corps projects as well there in the state office. So in terms of reporting and communication relationships, this little graphic here shows the VISTA member there sitting on the porch of what we call the sponsoring organization, which is where you are. So for a VISTA member who needs support or supervision or guidance, they would first go to you, their supervisor, or perhaps others who have been designated within your organization who can provide them with that type of support and guidance. If there are issues that you're not able to address, or if there's support that you need to help your VISTA member, then the next stop would be to go to your state office. And again, all the types of programmatic issues that we talked about can be addressed there, or if a VISTA member is having issues and they believe they can't complete their year of service, that would be the type of concern that you would take to your state office. And then if the issue is not able to be resolved at the state office level, they would refer it to VISTA headquarters for additional support and guidance. All right, so that's it for a quick overview of the landscape. Now I want to turn you over to Kat Kane. She is a state program specialist in Alaska, but prior to that she was the state program specialist for the state of Washington. She's been with the Corporation for National and Community Service for about 5 years, but she comes with a lot of other experience that's really helpful. She herself is a proud AmeriCorps alum. She also has been an AmeriCorps project director and a VISTA supervisor. So she's got a lot of experience around VISTA and member support, and she's seen it from both sides. So I think she can really relate. So now I'm going to turn it over to Kat.
Thanks so much, Andy. And good morning, everyone. We're going to start today talking a little bit about the roles and responsibilities as a supervisor. And as a VISTA sponsor, you are responsible for both project management and member management within your team. For project management, sponsors should monitor the progress of your VISTA project, including progress towards your self-identified milestones and performance measures you select in e-grants. As sponsors, you'll report progress to the corporation through ongoing progress reports and an annual progress report supplement. And we'll go into these in more detail later in the presentation. Sponsors are also responsible for involving project beneficiaries in the planning, implementation, and evaluation of the VISTA project, just as you outlined your plans in your application. As the sponsor, you'll also help ensure VISTAs know the program expectations and benefits, such as the amount of their biweekly living allowance during the recruitment season. As a reminder, when sharing benefits information, like the living allowance or health benefits or anything related to the VISTA terms and conditions, please don't put that information directly on your site, and instead link to either nationalservice.gov or vistacampus.gov, so that VISTA will always have the most up-to-date and accurate information. For the member management portion of your role, you can help set a strong foundation for your VISTAs by crafting a really strong VAD proposal for each member. And the VAD is the Volunteer Assignment Description document that really serves as a roadmap for the VISTAs during their year of service. When you attend the in-person supervisors training in a couple of weeks, you'll have an in-depth look at writing VADs. For today's introduction, we'll just look at some of the other kinds of support you provide members during their year. All VISTAs will need ongoing support and guidance from their supervisors. And as with many things, the quality of support you provide really does help determine the success of the VISTA experience later on down the year. One of the documents you can find in your eGrants account is the Memorandum of Agreement, and that lists the sponsor obligations and responsibilities and can be revisited by logging into, again, your eGrants account online. Some of the provisions in the MA include hosting an on-site orientation and training. You should keep in mind that every VISTA has different experiences and different needs, different motivations for serving. Some will be recruited from the local community, others are national recruits and will not know anything about the community or the region they're now serving in. And so at the in-person supervisors training, we'll go into a more in-depth look at training, and you'll have a chance to write an on-site orientation and training plan if you haven't already developed one. Sponsors will also ensure that VISTAs have adequate administrative support in terms of office or desk space, phone, computer, email, those kinds of supplies. Sponsors will also monitor the VISTA's use of their 10 sick days and 10 annual leave days to make sure that they are both working full-time and that they're getting a break and having good life balance by taking advantage of some of that leave that they're entitled to. As the sponsor, you'll also ensure that every VISTA has a trained supervisor. If you're an intermediary sponsor with multiple partner sites, you'll want to make sure that each site supervisor also has the tools they need to successfully supervise and support their VISTAs. As the sponsor, you'll also want to ensure you have funds available to cover any service-related transportation for the VISTAs. They would need to fill out their V81 form in their MyAmericorps account, and you would be committing to reimbursing them for service-related travel, not for commuting, just for service-related travel that might be required for their role. Sponsors also submit biweekly sponsor verification forms to account for their members' whereabouts. And finally, sponsors should be prepared to provide a possible advance of up to $500 in cash for select emergencies if an emergency happens over the weekend and you can't contact the state office. Hopefully most of the time you're able to contact the state office and we're able to connect members in the case of emergency to a flight home for a funeral or other types of events. And as a reminder, the vistacampus.gov website is a really great resource for both members and supervisors and includes more information on these topics and many, many more topics. As a sponsor, one of your responsibilities also includes acknowledging VISTAs and the corporation. Legislators and community members in your county or borough want to know about the impact of their federal dollars. So we strongly encourage you to recognize the good work of the VISTAs and the corporation as a funder on your website and newsletter articles and during radio or television presentations. You might consider putting the VISTA logo on business cards or email signatures, including the logo on event banners, or including the corporation on a list of sponsors and funders in an event flyer. And please make sure to recognize your VISTAs publicly as well, not as staff, but as members devoting their lives to a year of national service. Nationally recruited VISTAs can benefit from your insights when they begin their housing search in their new service area. Some VISTAs are permitted to relocate prior to PSO and starting service, while other VISTAs, like ones in Hawaii and Alaska, are not generally permitted to relocate in advance. So you'll want to discuss with your VISTA candidate how relocating before or after PSO might impact their service experience and their ability to settle in. And you'll want to remind them that they're expected to secure their own housing using their biweekly living allowance. Although your sponsoring organization is not required to provide any housing, you should try to help ensure that housing is not a problem for the VISTA when they arrive. So some suggestions for a smooth transition include offering them temporary housing until they find a place that is affordable and convenient. Keeping your ears open if you hear of inexpensive rental opportunities, hand-me-down furniture, or donated household goods. Sometimes board members or even other agency staff know of rooms for rent or have friends giving away gently used furniture that might be really greatly appreciated by a VISTA who's new in town. And it's really great too when you're able to help VISTAs identify which neighborhoods are safe and affordable, maybe even giving them a tour upon arrival in town. That might include driving past affordable apartment complexes or neighborhoods that could be a good fit. And when possible, do let them know about community newspapers, websites, or bulletin boards that list apartment openings or shared housing opportunities. And if you are an intermediary sponsor with multiple partner sites, it can be nice to see if other VISTAs on your project or in your town might also need a roommate and be able to do shared housing together. So when VISTAs begin their term, we provide a pre-service orientation before they start service, and then once they arrive at their service site, the project sponsor is responsible for providing a local on-site orientation and training. Guidance on how to develop your on-site orientation and training will be provided during the in-person supervisor's orientation in a few weeks. In the meantime, you can reach out to your state office staff to learn more about developing your training plan and the timeline for submitting that plan for review. And now I'll turn it over to Andy for the first question and answer session.
All right, thank you so much, Kat. And so we want to pause here before we move on and just see if any questions have come up regarding the information that we've heard so far about your responsibilities in terms of supporting your VISTA members, or anything that was covered earlier about the corporation or our other national service programs. So if you would like to ask a question, you can do it by phone, assuming that you're connected by either phone or a headset with a microphone. To do that, we ask that you raise your hand, and so in the right side you'll see you see Andy Clark just raised her hand. So just below the participant pane is a little hand icon. If you click it, your hand will come up. We'll know that it's you, and then we'll be able to unmute your phone. I should say this only works if when you log into the WebEx, you put in your participant ID, and that way WebEx knows which line is yours as opposed to anybody else's. You can also ask a question through the WebEx Q&A feature. To open up the Q&A pane, click in the tab in the upper right corner of your screen where it says Q&A, and then at the bottom you'll see a little window. You can type your question and click send, and it'll come in. So we'll give you just a minute here to see if any questions are coming. All right, I don't see any yet, so we're still early in the, oh wait, now I change, see that. So Lindsay has raised her hand, Lindsay Begum. So Lindsay, your line is open.
Great, thanks. I have a quick question, and maybe you're going to cover it later in the webinar, but the money that I pay to support our VISTAs, the annual allowance, the living stipend, the cell phone stipend, does that all go through VISTA? Do they pay that and I reimburse CNCS?
Kat, do you want to take that question?
Sure. It depends in part if you are a standard grant or a program grant. Most VISTAs across the country are standard grants, and that means we at headquarters pay out the living allowance every 2 weeks. We pay their health benefits and child care assistance, ed award, all of those kinds of things. If you're a grant program, you would conduct the payroll internally within your agency. Okay. Some projects also have a cost share requirement where that's your way of contributing a local match to the grant. And if you're a project that has a cost share requirement, you would be invoiced a couple times a month for the equivalent of a living allowance, but the corporation headquarters would still pay out and administer that payroll.
Okay.
So you would not pay that. So.
We have a cost share agreement. Are the VISTAs on your insurance, on CNCS insurance?
Yeah, we'll discuss the healthcare benefits later in the presentation, but VISTAs are entitled to some healthcare benefits through the program.
Okay. I was asking because my HR wanted to know if they needed to go through our safety training in case they had an accident at work or there was a work comp case.
Okay. It is generally a great idea to involve them in trainings whenever possible at the local agency.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Lindsay. And if you click the little hand icon again, then your hand will go down, and I won't keep calling on you. Checking to see if we have any other questions, and I don't see any at this time. So let's go ahead and move on, and we'll take your questions again in just a few minutes.
Andy, this is Indy and Amy in Portland, and we noticed that Dorothy had a question that she posted in the chat, and she wanted to know, when are the OSOT plans due?
Great. Thank you, Amy.
Okay. Dorothy, the on-site orientation and training plans are generally due a few weeks before your candidates attend the pre-service orientation and start their service. Some state offices have exact deadlines and timelines they'd like to see them from, so they can give you that support, and so you just want to contact your specific state program specialist and state office to find out your deadline.
Great. All right. Thanks, Kat, and I'll turn it back over to you for the presentation.
Sounds good. Next, we're going to talk about the member terms, conditions, and benefits. And hopefully by now you've all had time to take the online terms, conditions, and benefits course that really details what's provided and allowed to members during their VISTA service. If a member violates one of the terms or conditions, the supervisor needs to contact their state office immediately. Different violations have different repercussions, and for the protection of the whole project and any other members on board, it's really critical to act promptly and reach out to the state office. So let's do a quick review to see everybody's understanding of the situation. In your WebEx screen, under the participant window, near the hand icon, you'll see a green check mark or a red X that you can use to vote with your answers on the following question. So we'll just take a little poll. So the first question is, if you've had a chance to take that terms and conditions course, can VISTAs work part-time during their year of service, maybe selling something like Avon or Amway in their free time when they're away from the office? So use the green check mark if VISTA policy allows part-time work, or select the red X if you think it's not allowed. So again, that's in the participant window of your WebEx screen. Below your names, you'll see the green check mark or red X. Oh, good. Looks like lots of people are logging in with their votes, and we have consensus. Lots of red X's. So that is correct. The answer is no. VISTAs are not allowed to supplement their income during their year of service, even if it's part-time work or even if it's on the weekend. They are expected to live at the poverty line just like the communities and clients they're serving. So you can click to remove your X, and then we'll look at the next question is, can VISTAs register voters as part of their assignment? Again, you can use the green check mark to say yes, you can register voters, or you can select the red X to say no, voter registration is not allowed. Okay, looks like lots of people are weighing in, and for the most part, everybody is correct once again. Voter registration is not allowed as part of their VISTA service. It's something they can do in their free time that's not part of their VISTA service, and they would just need to do it on their own time, not in VISTA gear, and not while identifying as a VISTA. In general, VISTAs cannot engage in political activity, religious activity, lobbying, or union organizing as part of their VISTA service. They can do those kinds of things or attend rallies or attend church services on their own non-VISTA time, but can't engage while serving as a VISTA or while identifying as a VISTA. And VISTAs, like we just mentioned, are prohibited from supplementing their income with outside employment during their year of service. So we don't have time today to go deep into all of the materials from the Terms, Conditions, and Benefits course. So I'll again take this reminder, or this opportunity to remind you to please view the Terms and Conditions course after this webinar if you haven't already had a chance to do so. but we will mention a couple of main key points to help get you started before then. As a supervisor, you'll want to monitor your VISTA's time and attendance to ensure they're serving full-time, and for most agencies, this usually means about 40 hours a week. VISTAs are also entitled to 10 days of annual leave, 10 days of sick leave, and to receive any federal holidays recognized by your agency that the rest of the staff also receive as holidays. So what that means is if your agency staff receive Veterans Day, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's Day, your VISTA would also receive those holidays at the same time. We'll do 2 quick notes about nepotism, keeping it short and sweet. A person cannot hold a VISTA member position if a member of his or her family exercises supervisory authority over that VISTA. Also, a person cannot hold the position of a VISTA supervisor if he or she is related to the corporation program official responsible for the VISTA project. Now moving on, let's talk a little bit about early termination and resignations of members. Hopefully this won't come up, but sometimes it does, so there are some processes to know about to help get you through the process. If something comes up and a member decides to leave service early, the sponsor must notify their state office staff immediately. This can happen for a variety of reasons: family, health, satisfaction, or other employment opportunities. And following the early termination process is critical because it affects payroll, their future ability to serve, and the determination of their benefits. After contacting the state office, the VISTA and their supervisor must complete a future plan form in the eGrants member portal to exit them from service in a timely manner, ensure they're not overpaid, and ensure they get their relocation home or any other benefits they're entitled to. On the other hand, if a situation arises where a VISTA just isn't working out and might need to be removed or terminated, the sponsor can request the member's removal from the project. They can't simply terminate a member, but they can request the removal from the project. There are a variety of reasons that a match between a member and the project might not work out. It will be up to the state office to review your documentation to determine if a member needs to be terminated or if they might be able to remain a VISTA and simply transfer to a new project. So the request to remove a member must be made in writing to the state office and should include detailed descriptions of corrective actions taken, as well as what kinds of support you've provided to the members. So to recap, when you anticipate problems or are taking significant performance-based actions, please do contact the state office quickly and immediately. And remember that you don't have the authority to remove a member from the project. Only the state office can do that. There's a legal process that must be followed, as outlined in the Supervisor's Handbook, and there's also an appeals process available to members to ensure their input is also shared and heard. In general, whenever possible, it's best to avoid getting to the situation in the first place by providing a strong level of support, using effective management practices, providing timely feedback to members, documenting challenges if they come up, and as always, do ask for help before it gets to that point. It's also important to note that the authorization to replace a VISTA who needs to leave mid-year is not automatic, and you'll want to work closely with your state office to determine if and when you could begin recruitment for a new VISTA. The first rule is always call the state office when you anticipate a problem might arise. On a happier topic, the VISTA Member Support Unit, or the VMSU, is available as a resource specifically to help manage VISTA's benefits. If a member has a question about their benefits, they can contact the VMSU through the National Service Hotline, either over the web or on the phone. As a sponsor, you're also welcome to contact the VISTA Member Support Unit for a member's benefits, though generally it should be unnecessary. And as always, if you have programmatic issues, do contact your state office directly. The VMSU is also available to help with a variety of VISTA member benefit questions, like the ones listed above on the slide. One note on child care in particular: if a member is having issues with their child care application being denied, please help them understand it generally means they don't have the proper documentation in their application, or they have an incomplete invoice sent from the child care provider. In situations like this arise, the VMSU staff work with GAP Solutions. They're our child care provider for VISTA, and they can help get those issues resolved. Like we started talking about just a few minutes ago when there was a question about the living allowance, Most VISTAs across the country are standard VISTAs. That means they receive a living allowance every 2 weeks via direct deposit, and they'll set that up online in their MyAmericorps account. They can also log into their MyAmericorps account to review their W-2 or 1099 forms, as well as their biweekly earnings statements that show just how much comes in each direct deposit. If you have a VISTA who doesn't have a bank account, they can select paper checks in the mail, though you might want to consider helping them set up a bank account to make sure that they can receive the living allowance payments easier throughout the rest of the year. If for some reason a VISTA doesn't receive their living allowance or has questions, they can contact the VMSU via the National Service Hotline with specific information about the pay period or the missing check. Members who've selected direct deposit can usually avoid most issues with payroll and ensure a timely delivery of their living allowance. If you are one of the projects that is a program grant, payroll is managed by you as the sponsor, including any tax reporting or deductions. And while we're on the topic of VISTA living allowances, we should note that the living allowance cannot be used in calculating benefits for public assistance programs if the VISTA was eligible for or already receiving benefits prior to joining VISTA. So if you have members who do receive benefits, this could include food stamps, SSI, TANF, child care, assisted housing, veterans benefits, or Social Security. And you can remind your VISTAs that they can download a personalized income disregard letter from their MyAmericorps account if they need documentation for public assistance programs. Now I'll turn it back over to Andy to talk a little bit about VISTA health benefits.
Great. Thank you, Kat. So as you've heard a little bit already that the AmeriCorps program does offer a limited health care plan to cover all members. It's a free benefit, so there's no charge to the member for having it. But it is a limited plan. It's self-funded. It's not insurance. It's actually a self-funded health coverage plan. And it's important to know that it does not meet the minimal essential coverage criteria of the Affordable Care Act. And most notably, it does not meet those criteria because it does not cover pre-existing conditions. So to talk a little bit more about that. The plan is designed in a way to reduce the out-of-pocket costs for most VISTA members. And as I mentioned, it's free. They don't have to pay a premium for it. And it's an individual plan, so we are only covering VISTA members, not their spouses or dependents or anyone else in their family. And again, it's not full major medical coverage, but it does cover the types of services that VISTA members are most likely to access. And the fee structure is set up in a way that it reduces their out-of-pocket expenses. There's no specific deductible that they have to meet, and copays are limited. It's $5 for our medical office visits, and prescriptions are either free if it's a generic or only $5 for brand name prescriptions. And if they have to, say, go to the ER and they're hospitalized, they pay essentially nothing for that emergency hospitalization. There's no application period. There's no application form. Members are automatically enrolled the day after their PSO, so essentially their first day of service. And we do provide access to the most highly requested service, like an annual OBGYN exam, CDC recommended immunizations, essential screenings, and approved medications. And there are no annual lifetime limits on the coverage for VISTA members. We do have a website that talks about this. It's vistacampus.gov/healthcare, and it explains the intersection of the Affordable Care Act and healthcare, which we're going to look at in just a second. But it also provides links to our plan administrator, which is 7 Corners. So let's talk a little bit about the Affordable Care Act. Most of us are familiar that the Affordable Care Act requires all Americans to have health insurance, or if they don't, to face a penalty. And the law applies to VISTA members as well. And as you probably know, healthcare and the Affordable Care Act and its implementation is a pretty complex situation. And what we have found challenging in providing healthcare to VISTAs are all the state-by-state differences. So if a state expanded Medicaid, then VISTA members most likely will be able to access healthcare through the expanded Medicaid, but if it hasn't, then there's sort of like a donut hole where VISTAs fall into this place where they make too much money, but they don't make enough to receive Medicaid. So we've taken this approach of trying to provide in a most cost-effective way coverage that will meet the needs of most of our VISTAs. And that's what we've tried to do, to provide a substantial health benefit that's available equally to all our members serving across the country in states and territories, and to make that available within our limited budget. So our plan now is to maintain this current benefit not only through the end of this year, but for any VISTA member who starts service during 2014. So we've got 5 classes of VISTAs coming in November. So they will automatically be enrolled in the AmeriCorps Health Benefit, and they can maintain that until the end of their service year. We are undergoing a little bit of a change with our plan administrator. So the company Seven Corners, who has been administering it for the last, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 years, they will be completing their contract at the end of this year, and they'll be replaced by a company called IMG, International Medical Group. So we're in the transition period now, and we'll be communicating with members and with sponsors as these changes get implemented. So, because our coverage does not meet the minimal criteria of the Affordable Care Act, we do encourage VISTA members to explore other options that they have available to have compliant coverage. Many of them, through their family, could get onto a family plan through their spouse or maybe their parents. VISTA members can also access insurance through the insurance marketplace, part of the Affordable Care Act. And then we know some members also qualify for Medicaid, Medicare, or for those with military service, TRICARE. There are some individuals who will be exempt from the requirement to have health insurance based on their income, or because of the fact that they're in a state that did not expand Medicaid. And again, because it varies so widely based on individual circumstances, we really encourage VISTAs to go to healthcare.gov, which is the federal government site, to find out what their particular situation is and what their requirements are. And so this is important. Why are we talking so much about healthcare to you as supervisors? Well, it's important because when you go to recruit VISTA members, they may naturally have questions about it, and you may want to include all the benefits that come with the position when you're making your position announcements. But we do want to make sure that the information that's going out from sponsors is accurate, so that we don't have anybody who believed that they were going to have a full medical insurance plan with vision and dental and all of that. And then when they come to us, they find out that that's not the case. So there are some changes that will be coming up in 2015. And so I want to just make you aware of that. So I already alluded that we'll be shifting our plan administrator, which should be pretty seamless and mostly invisible. But also in January, we'll be offering a new benefit that VISTA members can access. And this is for those who maintain their own insurance throughout their service year. They can access a healthcare allowance. And this allowance, I just learned this morning, and I forgot to update the slide, the allowance is up to now $6,600 because $6,600 is the out-of-pocket maximum that anybody who has insurance through the marketplace would face as an individual. So we're offering this allowance as a reimbursement for any annual deductible or co-insurance costs, any co-pays for doctor's visits or services or for prescriptions that's not covered by the insurance can be paid out of the healthcare allowance. The one thing that can't be paid is the insurance premium itself. So, so members have to have the insurance on their own, and then for any of the additional out-of-pocket expenses, we'll reimburse them up to the maximum, $6,600, but they cannot use that allowance to pay for the insurance premiums. All right, so that's it for healthcare. We are planning to do another webinar in a couple of weeks for VISTA members and supervisors to talk about this new benefit and some of the associated changes that will be coming in January. We offered it last week, but we ran into a lot of technical issues, so we're going to do it again so that everybody will be able to hear. And so now I'm going to turn it back over to Kat to talk about other ways that you as a sponsor can support your VISTA member.
Okay. One of the questions we get at the state office a lot is from sponsors who recognize that it is not easy to live on the VISTA Living Allowance, and they want to find other ways they can help support their members. And we love getting questions like that. And because we get those questions, we wanted to give you a little bit of information right now. So if you're able to and you want to provide additional support to your VISTAs, you definitely can. If you are able to provide free or subsidized housing, that's great. Some help with health insurance, as Andy just spoke about. You might be able to offer cell phones or give clothing and promotional items, and hopefully ensure that the VISTAs receive ongoing training throughout their year whenever possible. You're also encouraged to recognize and appreciate your VISTAs just as you would any other volunteer who's really important to your agency. And then we get the questions about specifically giving gifts. Gifts can be given to VISTAs, but you need to be careful to do it in a way that would not supplement their income, since that's a prohibited activity, and that wouldn't unfairly recognize one VISTA but not another VISTA. So VISTA gifts can only be given if it's a special occasion, like maybe a holiday or a birthday or a recognition, and if they're also given to the rest of the VISTAs. And as a sponsor, you'll want to avoid giving things like cash, money, check cards, and gas cards, things that can be viewed as supplementing their income. Gifts can't be given on a regular, ongoing basis, but can be given for special occasions if the rest of the VISTAs on your project are also being recognized equally. And let's also talk about VISTA Leaders. If you have a stellar VISTA on your team who might be interested in serving a second year, you might encourage them to apply for a VISTA Leader role after they've completed their term of service. There are about 200 VISTA leaders across the country who've already served for 1 year and are now signing on to a second year of VISTA to help recruit, support, and train teams of VISTAs within a specific project. If your project has approval for a VISTA leader, they'll get to attend a leader orientation, similar to your supervisor orientation and the member's pre-service orientation. And at that leader orientation, they'll be prepared for their role helping support your team. More information about VISTA Leaders is available in the resource section of your supervisor's orientation workbook and also on vistacampus.gov. So with that, I will turn it back over to Andy for another question and answer session.
All right, thank you, Kat. And so we have several questions that came in mostly while I was speaking, so maybe I'll take that as a note to do a better job of explaining things. So first, Elle asks, when will members who attend the Atlanta PSO receive their first stipend payment? So the Atlanta pre-service orientation is happening November 4th through the 7th. And so the pay period that they will fall into corresponds with a pay date of November 20th. And so the schedule of living allowance payments is available on the VISTA campus. We also provide it to them in the pre-service orientation workbook. So we'll cover this when they're at PSO, but I'm sure if you're getting the question, you want to have the answer. And for any of you, you can go to the VISTA campus, and it's in the section called Life as a VISTA in the Benefits tab, and you'll see a section for living allowance. And then there's a Resources tab under Living Allowance that has all of these documents, and the pay calendar is there. All right, so next question is, are VISTA members exempt from penalties associated with the insurance coverage requirements? I saw this on another VISTA training document on the VISTA campus. Great question, and it's something I sort of glossed over. So for 2014, that is the current year that we're in, the VISTA program received what's called a waiver from the Center for Medicaid and Medicare Services, who administers the whole Affordable Care Act implementation. And the waiver says that any VISTA member who did not have compliant coverage or insurance that meets the minimal essential requirements, they will not be penalized. But that waiver is only good for 2014. So for next year, any portion of the year during which a VISTA member does not have coverage, they could potentially face a penalty. We're not sure if anybody actually will face a penalty, but the possibility is there. We don't think, based on the low, the low living allowance, that many VISTAs would even be subject to a penalty. But we can't promise that it won't happen because it's basically out of our control. So that is a change for 2015 that I failed to mention, is that we do not have that waiver from the health care penalty. Anne asks, can you elaborate on the exemptions for states that did not expand Medicaid? So, states that did not expand Medicaid, depending on the income level of the individual, when they go to healthcare.gov to sign up for coverage, they'll find out that they don't have the option of enrolling in Medicaid, and their income is below the income requirement for the other plans, say a bronze level plan that's available. So they fall into this this category where they can receive an exemption from having to have compliant coverage. I don't know all the details about it. It gets complex, and it's not only on your income level, but other factors. Are you single, married, dependent children, and all the rest? And we point everybody to healthcare.gov as the sort of definitive source on that. Let's see, more questions have come in. Glenn asks, can I pay for a VISTA member's lunch if we are having a lunch meeting? It's something that we do for other employees. So that's more programmatic. Kat, I'm going to turn that question over to you.
Sure. Glenn, that's a great question, and the answer is yes, you can totally pay for a VISTA member's lunch if you're out at lunch, as you would with other employees, or if you have a meeting at a coffee shop. That is a great way to help recognize and support them as you would any other staff. So thanks for the question.
All right. A couple more questions related to health coverage and other benefits. So Dorothy says, what if VISTAs cannot afford additional coverage? How much is the penalty? Again, I don't know. The penalties are changing from 2014 to 2015. For 2014, I think the minimum amount was $95 or 6% of your annual gross income. I know those numbers have gone up. I can't quote the exact figures for 2015. So again, healthcare.gov will be the resource to get that kind of information. Chiquita asks, where can we get information about the $6,600 available for reimbursements? And will current members be able to use it in January? So we are putting together information as we speak because as I said, the limit of the out-of-pocket maximum just changed. So we're refining those documents. We'll be sending them out, information about the upcoming webinar, as well as some of these resource documents. So we'll be emailing them to all VISTA members and to every sponsor and supervisor that we have accurate email addresses for. We'll also post it on the VISTA campus. And again, the link or the direct address is vistacampus.gov/healthcare. And that's where we'll keep all of the most up-to-date and current materials related to healthcare. So if anything changes, that will be the place to go. Now to the second part of your question, will current members be able to use this healthcare allowance starting in January? And the answer is yes. So everybody who is a VISTA member in 2015, and as long as they have their own coverage, that is, they've purchased insurance or they're covered under their family plan or whatever, they can access the healthcare allowance up to $6,600. If they don't have other coverage and they're covered by our plan, administered by Seven Corners, then they're not able to get the $6,600 because we've already invested so much in that plan to keep the out-of-pocket costs really low. So they wouldn't typically get anywhere near $6,600 out of pocket if they're on our plan. All right, so I'm going to take a look to see if we've got raised hands. Sorry if you've been waiting. I'm skimming and I don't see any at this point. We've had a lot of questions in the chat and in the Q&A. I think we've covered them, so let's go ahead and move on.
Sounds good. So the next topic we'll cover is about your required reporting as a VISTA sponsor. The easiest and most frequent report you'll complete, which you may have already done, is the sponsor verification form. And the corporation must receive verification from sponsors that all of your VISTAs are currently serving and active on their project site. As the sponsor, you verify the active VISTA member status every 2 weeks in eGrants by submitting that sponsor verification form online. It usually takes less than a minute to do, pretty quick and easy. The next report you'll do is the Project Progress Report. Sponsors report on project accomplishments throughout the year via the Project Progress Report in eGrants. These reports are with your self-identified performance measures from your VISTA application and also include narratives from both members and supervisors about the progress of your project. Progress reports are quarterly by default, and your reporting dates are set in conjunction with your state office. You can always log into your eGrants account, and at the bottom right corner of your screen, you'll see the progress report and be able to see any reports that are currently entered for your project, what the reporting period is, and when they're due. If you have questions about your specific report deadline, you can also contact your state office. And one quick note on progress reports. If you have great news about a VISTA's accomplishments in your project, there's no need to wait until the end of the next quarter to let the state office know. If your VISTA just won a big grant or hosted a large gala or was interviewed for the newspaper, we love hearing about that kind of thing. So please give us a call or drop us an email and let us know so we can help recognize their accomplishments. You don't have to wait 3 months just to tell us the good news. So now we've covered the biweekly sponsor verification form and the quarterly progress report. Let's talk next about the annual VISTA Progress Report Supplement, or the VPRS. Unlike the quarterly progress reports that ask about your self-identified performance measures and milestones, the annual progress report supplement tracks standardized information across all of the corporation's programs. It happens only once a year and is generally due at the end of October. As you all know, VISTA projects must focus on creating sustainability and capacity, so the VPRS also focuses on building capacity. Capacity building is defined as a set of activities that expand the scale, reach, efficiency, or effectiveness of programs and organizations. The VPRS report is found in eGrants, again in the bottom right corner of your login screen, and has one screen for each of the following categories, where you were provided on the screen with the key definitions for each of those categories. For example, under the resource development section, you'll be asked to fill in the dollar value of cash resources developed by the VISTAs. Maybe they were able to write a grant or get large donations. And you would also track the dollar value of non-cash resources developed by the VISTA. Maybe they were able to get in-kind donations for an auction or a venue that was given for free with an in-kind donation. If you have questions about your progress report supplement, please contact your corporation's state office. To prepare for reporting on future VPRS forms, you'll want to ensure you have established tracking tools to collect the data that's relevant for your program. The VPRS actually has a good number of questions that you'll only need to report on the areas in which your specific projects are working. There's a fun new mobile tool available for your VISTAs to collect data throughout the year, and it's called the AmeriCorps VISTA Impact App. Information on this free app will be provided at the supervisor's orientation or can be found on vistacampus.gov. So to recap the reporting, it's hopefully relatively simple. You'll submit a quarterly progress report where you'll report on your accomplishments of the overall project and your self-identified performance measures, and those deadlines are set at your state office level. And you'll also submit the annual VPRS due each year in October, where you'll report on standardized CNCS performance measures. And like I mentioned just a minute ago, beyond the formal report, we really do love hearing from sponsors and encourage you to be in regular contact with your state office about any challenges you're having or program successes. At the state office, one of the things we do every single month is submit a report to headquarters, and any emails with great stories and accomplishments and grant awards are really helpful for us so we can report out on a timely manner. And then we can help recognize your accomplishments, and headquarters even help. They share the information with congressional offices and press releases to other national media outlets. Some states also have a page on the vistacampus.gov website for communicating with sponsors. And don't hesitate to contact your state office by phone as well. We're always available for questions and clarifications, for technical assistance, problem solving, and for moral support. We really are here to help in any way possible. Another way to report out on best practices and get additional guidance is through compliance monitoring visits conducted by the state offices. These visits are scheduled in advance. However, not every project receives a compliance monitoring visit. They usually happen over the course of a number of years. You'll be selected maybe once in a number of years, or if your project has had a number of challenges and you need that additional support. If you do receive a compliance monitoring visit, you'll receive a feedback letter afterwards to share conclusions with the project director and the agency executive director. So they have all the information about what's going really well and what you can do to help support those challenges. And this is a short section, so I'll turn it back over to Andy for the next Q&A.
All right, thank you, Kat. So again, if you would like to ask a question, you can feel free to send it in the chat or put it in the Q&A feature down on the bottom right, or raise your hand. We have a question that came in just a minute ago, and I just made it disappear. It has to do with reporting, and so Kat, I'm going to direct this to you. Edwin asks, for national organizations that are working in multiple states, how does that affect reporting? And I think maybe it was around when you were talking about the deadlines and the reporting periods and all of that that a state office would set up. So could you talk a little bit about national projects?
Sure. Well, in general, with the progress reports, they are set quarterly for most new projects. And after that, the timelines can change according to the state office and according to the longevity of the program and the comfort with the project goals. If you are a national project in multiple sites, you would definitely want to work closely with the state office that is managing your overall grant to find out when those reporting dates would be due and what the reporting period would be. Sometimes it's quarterly, sometimes it's every trimester, other times it's twice a year. So you definitely want to work closely with the state office to find out when those reports are due. And often for those national projects, you would be collecting your data locally, compiling it, and sending it off to your national office, your main office, to submit on your behalf for all the different states in the project.
Great. So Edwin, I hope we answered your question. If not, feel free to jot us another one in the chat. Yep, he says yes. Great. Okay, good. Well, I'm looking for other questions, and I'm not seeing any. Right now I'm looking. If you want to ask a question over the phone, you can raise your hand and we'll open up your line, but I don't see any hands raised right now. And I think we've covered everybody in the Q&A. So we'll go ahead and move on. I just want to cover a few next steps before we wrap up so that you'll know sort of where to go from here and some other resources that will help support you in your role as a VISTA supervisor. So as we've mentioned, and as I'm sure you're aware, you will be going to a face-to-face 3-day supervisor orientation either next week in Atlanta or 3 weeks from now in Los Angeles. As you've heard from Kat and you've probably seen in some of the materials, you'll have a lot of opportunity to go into depth on things like recruitment, writing a strong VISTA assignment description, creating a plan for on-site orientation and training, looking at some of the differences between supervising VISTA members versus paid employees, regular employees. So lots of great stuff. We encourage you to bring your laptop with you so that you can really fully participate. And there are a few things we ask you to do in advance. You should have received an email with directions around this, but on the VISTA campus, which is vistacampus.gov, in the area for supervisors, there's what we call the Supervisor Welcome Packet, and there's also a link to the Terms, Conditions, and Benefits course, indicated here, TCB, and we'd like you to complete that before you get there so that if it raises any questions, you'll be ready to go with those when you get to the supervisor orientation. We also encourage you to bring with you a laptop or a tablet so that you can take notes or be able to log in to your eGrants account or to the VISTA campus during the training so that you can look things up and you can actually access some of the resources and materials that you'll need. Likewise, if you've already created one or more VISTA assignment descriptions, or maybe you inherited them from somebody who came before you, please bring copies with you. It'll be really useful so that you can sort of look at those with a critical eye and see where maybe there are some improvements, and you can get input from some of your colleagues there. And likewise, if there's an existing plan for your on-site orientation and training, bring that with you as well. It'll just be really helpful to have those as working documents as a place to start so that you can work from there and then improve and get as much input and support from our facilitators, but also from each other. And then just another word is it is a really tremendous networking opportunity because as a VISTA supervisor at your project, it can be kind of a lonely position. There probably won't be many other people in your organization who even understand much about VISTA or know what your role is about. And so Unfortunately, you probably won't find a whole lot of support from your peers within your organization, but there's tremendous support from other VISTA supervisors around the country, and you'll get to meet about 30 of them when you go to your training. So we really encourage you to make the most of that networking opportunity. All right, so just want to wrap up here and point you again to the place where you can get in touch with us or access materials and resources, vistacampus.gov. And if you have questions related to this, you can also email us at vistawebinars@cns.gov, and I apologize that that's not up there on the screen. So I want to thank you for your participation today, and also I want to say a special word of thanks to Kat Kane from the Alaska State Office for her time and lending all of her wisdom and experience with you for this session, and I wish you smooth travels and a great and successful training.